Hello everyone, welcome to Inkling's English classes. In this video we are going to discuss Aristotle's concept of tragedy. So if you haven't yet subscribed our channel, do subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss any update or notification. The very word tragedy brings to mind Aristotle and the Poetics. Tragedy indeed is the major concern of Poetics as it has come down to us. Tragedy is considered by Aristotle to be the highest poetic form. His definition and theory of tragedy presents remarkable insight and comprehension. So let's have a look at the definition of tragedy given by Aristotle. Aristotle's famous definition of tragedy says, "A tragedy is the imitation of an action that is serious and also as having magnitude, complete in itself in language with pleasurable accessories. Each kind brought in separately in the part of the work in a dramatic, not in a narrative form, with incidents arousing pity and fear, wherewith to accomplish its catharsis of such emotions." So, the definition clearly falls into two parts. The first part tells us about the nature of tragedy, its object, manner, and medium of imitation. The second part points out the function of tragedy. Now let's understand the definition given by Aristotle. Aristotle says, "A tragedy is the imitation of an action that is serious." Now what does this word action means? Aristotle does not define the word action, but we get the implication through the qualities which Aristotle ascribes to it. For convenience sake, one can say that an action shows the progress of an individual from one position to another, at which he either dies or becomes involved in a completely changed set of circumstances. Action is the plot consisting of the logical and inevitable sequence of incidents. The action must be complete, which means that it must have a beginning, middle, and end. The beginning is that which does not itself come after anything else in a necessary sequence, but after which some other thing does naturally exist or come to pass. In other sense, there is nothing that has a beginning or an end. There is a continuous causal relationship between the events. What Aristotle means, however, is that a play should have good reason for beginning where it does and for ending where it does. For example, at the opening of Hamlet, there is every indication that if it were not for the appearance of the ghost, events in Denmark would have settled down into a period of rest. The end is that which naturally comes after something else, but has nothing else following it. And a middle is that which follows something else and leads to something else. In every case, there is a cause of inevitability, probability, and logicality. Aristotle further says, besides being serious, the action must have a certain magnitude. The term magnitude has been wrongly interpreted as important or dignified. It actually refers to the size. A tragedy must be of correct length. It must not be so long that it cannot be grasped in its entirety without confusion. Neither must it be so short that its parts cannot be comprehended properly. Aristotle compares the tragic plot to a living organism in order to bring out the importance of the correct size. The plot or action should be of such a size that it allows human memory to encompass the whole of it. It should at the same time be long enough to permit the orderly and natural development in the change of fortune leading to catastrophe. So, the length should be proportionate and the play should be an organic whole. While defining tragedy, Aristotle says, "A tragedy is the imitation of an action that is serious and also having magnitude, complete in itself, in language, embellished with each kind of artistic ornament. So here he talks about embellishments. Aristotle means verse and song by term embellishment. Tragedy uses different kinds of embellishment. Verse is used for the dialogues. Chorus speaks in song. These add beauty and decor to the tragedy, and their end is to please the spectator or the reader. Melody and verse are not indispensable or absolutely essential parts of tragedy, according to Aristotle. While talking about the function of the tragedy, Aristotle says the function of tragedy is to arouse pity and fear and purges the audience of these emotions, that is, provides an outlet of these emotions. The term catharsis has been interpreted as a pleasurable outlet, that is, a sense of relief accompanying the emotional release. The most debated term in the Poetics perhaps is catharsis. Used only once in the whole of the Poetics, the term has unfortunately been left unexplained. Different critics have given different explanations, contradictory, controversial, and confusing. In the main interpretation of the term goes along three lines. One set of critics have explained the term in the sense of purgation. Tragedy arouses pity and fear through its painful and horrific incidents. The sight and experience of these purge the human mind of such emotions, or rather reduce such emotions to a proper balance in the human psyche. There is the homeopathic explanation of like curing the like. It says that the excitement of the tragedy provides a safe outlet for our pent-up feelings, which we cannot express in actual life. Another set of critics interpret the term as purgation. The emotions are purified of their morbidity and distressing quality, which accompany them in the real life. The emotions are purified and reduced to their just measure. The clarification theory of catharsis relates the term to the structure of incidents rather than to the emotional response of the audience. The tragedy, by presenting an integrated whole of incidents, arousing pity and fear, brings about a clarification of such events. Catharsis in any case has to do with the function of tragedy, which is to provide the tragic variety of pleasure. Further, Aristotle talks about the quantitative elements of tragedy. Aristotle divides tragedy into 5 quantitative parts. These are not relevant to modern drama and apply only to the typical Greek tragedy. It thus has little interest for the modern reader. The quantitative elements are prologue, episode, exode, choric song. Choric song is further divided into parode and stasimon. After having given a definition of tragedy, Aristotle comes to the consideration of the formative elements of tragedy. He gives 6 formative elements of tragedy: plot, character, thought, diction, spectacle, and song. 3 of these, plot, character, and thought, are internal aspects, while 3, namely diction, spectacle, and song, are external aspects. Diction and song are concerned with the medium of imitation, while spectacle with the manner of imitation. Plot, character, and thought are concerned with the objects of imitation. The spectacle, according to Aristotle, has more to do with the stage effects. A successful poet depends on his own writing than on spectacle to produce the effect he wants. Fear and pity, for instance, can be produced by spectacle, but that would be rather vulgar. Spectacle obviously means the appearance of the actors on the stage, costume, scenic effect, and so on. Diction is the language through which the characters express themselves. The diction is a means of interpreting the thought, feelings, and sentiments of the character. It includes technical devices such as metaphor, rare words, etc., made use by the poet. Thought is the intellectual element in the tragedy and is expressed through the character. It is the power of saying whatever can be said or what is appropriate to the occasion. So, after having discussed Aristotle's concept of tragedy in detail, let's have a look at the limitation in his concept of tragedy. It is true that the concept of tragedy put forward by Aristotle is no mean achievement. It lends itself to a remarkable amount of adaptation beyond what was immediately present to the mind of a writer. Yet, the fact that Aristotle was writing only the Greek tragedy he knew does put forward limitation to his concept of tragedy. There is another limitation in Aristotle's theory. He does not take into account the religious origins of tragedy. Neither does he give enough importance to the outside forces which interact with the human forces in a play. In other words, he does not discuss a very basic issue in tragedy, conflict, both inner and outer conflict. In Greek tragedy itself, one feels existence of mysterious and divine forces. There is the effect of unseen on the seen. It is the tragic choice faced by the heroes and heroines which makes the Greek tragedy so awesome. Greek tragedy dramatizes the struggle between the contending moral forces. Aristotle does not discuss the collision of forces, the collision between man who is imprisoned within the limits of the actual and the forces outside, belonging to the superior power which restricts man's freedom. The conflict between man and outside forces, between problems of good and evil, are very much a part of tragedy of all ages. It is unfortunate that Aristotle does not discuss these factors. Although Aristotle's concept of tragedy has many limitations as it is based on Greek tragedy alone, yet his views lend themselves to remarkable amount of universalization. His views on tragedy are regarded as the history of tragedy. So that's it for this video. I hope you found the discussion helpful. If you found the video helpful, then do like it and share it with your friends. I'll be back very soon with a new video. Till then, stay tuned with Inklings English classes and don't forget to subscribe the channel.